Something grabbed her by the throat inside the empty house. There was no warning, no sound, no one else in the room. One moment she was bending down to pick up an old telephone lying on the floor. The next she felt pressure close around her neck, tight, deliberate and cold. Not a hand she could see, not fingers she could pull away, just force, enough to cut her breath. She stumbled backward, gasping. Whatever was holding her released its grip just long enough for her to turn and run. She didn't stop until she was outside, choking on air, the broken back door hanging behind her, like a wound that refused to close. She never returned to that house again. Years later, Emma would say that what happened that day wasn't the beginning of the story. It was the end, the final escalation of something that had followed her home decades earlier. Something that didn't announce itself with violence at first. Something that watched, waited, observed. What makes this case unsettling isn't a single dramatic incident, but the slow, methodical way it unfolded. The progression from quiet presence to physical interference. From being seen to being felt. From observation to attack. And Emma wasn't the only witness. Her family saw it too. This wasn't a story built on rumor. Multiple people experienced the same phenomena. They didn't seek attention. They moved out and tried to forget. But some things don't stay confined to the places where they begin. Emma's experience didn't start with fear. It started with curiosity. One night, years before the attack, she and a few friends went somewhere they weren't meant to treat lightly. A cemetery. They didn't break headstones. They didn't dig. But they laughed. They ran. They treated the place like a playground instead of a boundary. And nothing happened that night. No voices, no shadows, no warnings. The reaction came later, days later. Emma was asleep in her bedroom when she woke up and realized she wasn't alone. A woman sat in a chair beside her bed. Elderly, solid, fully formed, not transparent, not flickering, not dreamlike. Just there. The woman didn't speak. She didn't move. She simply watched. Emma didn't scream. She didn't feel terror. Not yet. The presence felt neutral. When morning came, she convinced herself it had been a dream. Then the woman appeared again, not only at night, sometimes in daylight, sometimes standing in the hallway, always silent, always watching. Emma kept going to school, kept quiet. Not until the house itself began to respond. Objects started moving, doors pushing back when someone tried to open them. Sounds at night that didn't match any source. A repetitive noise like heavy dripping that woke the entire household, only for a plumber to find no leaks. Then came the moment when the presence stopped being passive. Emma was in the kitchen, holding a container of boiling water, when her wrist twisted sharply, violently, as if someone had grabbed it. The container flew from her hand and shattered on the floor. The woman was standing there, and for the first time, Emma understood that whatever had followed her home was no longer content with watching. To understand how things reached that point, you have to go back to who Emma was before anything happened, and to what her life looked like when nothing felt threatening. She grew up in a quiet residential area, not isolated, not rural, not the kind of place people associate with ghost stories. Her family was ordinary, no history of mental illness, no obsession with the paranormal. Her parents worked regular jobs. The house they lived in wasn't old by any dramatic standard. It had no reputation, no rumors attached to it, no previous owners who had died violently or mysteriously. There was nothing about Emma's background that suggested she would later become the center of something inexplicable. When the incident at the cemetery happened, she was still young enough to think of it as nothing more than a thrill. A few friends, a late evening, a shared sense of boredom. The cemetery itself wasn't abandoned or hidden. It was a maintained burial ground near the edge of town, a place people passed every day without thinking much about it. They didn't go there looking for spirits. There was no ritual, no challenge, no attempt to summon anything. They walked between the graves, laughed too loudly, treated the space casually. At most, it was disrespectful, but not malicious. And when they left, nothing followed them home that night. At least, nothing they noticed. Emma didn't experience nightmares. She didn't feel watched. Days passed normally. School, family dinners, sleep, routine. The first appearance of the woman came without warning and without context. Emma would later emphasize this detail repeatedly. The figure didn't behave like something from a dream. Dreams faded. This didn't. The woman had weight, shape, presence. She occupied space in the room the same way furniture did. She sat in a chair beside the bed, hands folded in her lap, facing Emma directly. The lighting in the room hadn't changed. The shadows were normal. The woman's features were clear enough that Emma could describe them afterward. Aged skin, pale complexion, simple clothing, nothing exaggerated, nothing theatrical. Most importantly, the woman did nothing. No speaking, no reaching out, no expression of anger. That absence of threat was part of what made it easy to dismiss the encounter the next morning. Emma assumed her mind had produced something unusually vivid: stress, guilt, imagination. But the repetition removed that explanation. The woman appeared again and again, sometimes in the same place, sometimes elsewhere in the house. She didn't interact with Emma directly, but she followed her movements. If Emma changed rooms, the figure would eventually be there too, always watching. Emma began to test herself. She blinked hard, looked away and back again. The woman remained. She tried approaching her once, slowly, carefully, but the presence retreated down the hallway and vanished into one of the rooms. Emma didn't tell anyone at first. She was afraid of being dismissed or misunderstood. More than that, she was afraid of giving the experience weight by speaking it out loud. The house itself felt unchanged at that stage. No cold spots, no dramatic sounds, no visual disturbances beyond the woman. Life continued with an uneasy undercurrent, but without chaos. That changed when the environment began to respond. Small things at first. Resistance where there shouldn't have been any. Doors that felt heavier than usual. A sense of pressure in certain rooms. Then the sounds started. At night, the family would wake to a steady rhythmic noise, like liquid dripping onto a hard surface. It echoed through the house, loud enough to wake everyone, insistent enough to make sleep impossible. They searched for leaks, called a plumber, inspected pipes, ceilings, walls, nothing. No moisture, no damage, no explanation. Emma's behavior began to change. She became withdrawn, tense, alert to things others didn't notice. Her parents assumed stress, adolescence, normal issues that didn't require deeper investigation. Until one afternoon, while Emma was alone in the kitchen, the boundary between observation and interference disappeared. The boiling water incident was the first clear moment of physical aggression. The movement of her wrist was abrupt and forceful, stronger than a reflex, more deliberate than a muscle spasm. The container didn't slip. It was twisted from her grip. The presence of the woman in the room at that exact moment made coincidence impossible to ignore. That night, Emma told her mother everything. not in fragments, not hesitantly. She described the appearances, the watching, the sounds, the incident in the kitchen. She expected disbelief. Instead, she saw concern replace skepticism almost immediately. Her mother didn't interrupt, didn't argue. She listened, and within days, she saw the woman too. The figure appeared in the hallway, motionless, facing towards the bedrooms. Emma's mother followed her at a distance, watching as the woman moved into a room and vanished. There was no sensation of fear, just the certainty that something was occupying the space with them. From that point on, the activity escalated quickly. Objects began moving without contact. Doors resisted force. Household items shifted or fell without explanation. During cleaning, Emma's mother felt a vacuum cleaner ripped from her hands, as if pulled away by something invisible. The house was no longer passive, and whatever had entered their lives was no longer content to observe. Once the presence crossed from observation into interference, the household lost any sense of control over what was happening inside the house. The activity no longer occurred sporadically. It followed a pattern, one that grew more aggressive with time. The woman continued to appear, but she was no longer the only sign that something was there. Objects moved without warning, not slowly, not subtly. Chairs shifted. Items slid across flat surfaces as if pushed. Doors no longer behaved predictably. When someone tried to open them, they resisted. When someone tried to close them, they pushed back. The sounds intensified. The dripping noise returned night after night, louder than before. It echoed through the walls, through the ceilings, through the floors. It wasn't localized to one room. It seemed to follow whoever was awake, forcing attention. The family began turning on lights at night, moving together from room to room, trying to trace the source. They never found one. During the day, the house felt tense, heavy. Rooms felt occupied even when empty. Emma became increasingly withdrawn, spending long periods silent, staring into space. Then the interruptions became physical. Emma's mother described the moment the vacuum cleaner was torn from her hands as unmistakable. It wasn't a slip. It wasn't imbalance. The machine was pulled sideways with enough force to leave her standing frozen, staring at the space where it had been. No one was laughing. The house had become hostile. Emma's father, who until then had remained skeptical, began experiencing the disturbances himself. Doors slamming shut as he approached. Objects falling near him but never quite hitting him. And then came the incident that marked a turning point, not just in the activity, but in Emma herself. One afternoon, Emma was sitting with her father at the kitchen table. There had been no warning signs, no agitation. In the middle of a conversation, she stopped speaking. Her posture changed, her eyes unfocused, her breathing slowed. When she spoke again, it wasn't in the same tone. She began describing events that had nothing to do with her life. She said she was the daughter of a French doctor in the 19th century. She spoke in detail about rooms she had never seen, people she had never met. Her father tried to interrupt her. She didn't respond. When she came out of the trance, she had no memory of it. After that day, Emma began demonstrating changes that went beyond fear. Objects reacted to her presence. Metal bent when she touched it, not gradually, but suddenly. Utensils warped in her hands, hinges twisted, small items deformed as if subjected to intense force. No one could explain it. Medical professionals found nothing physically wrong. Psychological evaluations offered no clear diagnosis. Paranormal investigators came and went without conclusions. every explanation failed to account for the consistency of the phenomena. The woman appeared less frequently after this phase began. Her absence didn't bring relief. It felt intentional. The house itself had become the mechanism. Emma's personality shifted. She became detached, emotionally distant. Her sleep patterns changed. She experienced sudden exhaustion followed by bursts of agitation. The sounds at night became more violent, crashing, scraping, impacts with no visible cause. The family stopped sleeping separately. They locked doors out of instinctive desperation. The atmosphere inside the house felt oppressive. Visitors noticed it immediately. At one point, an investigator attempted to provoke a reaction by verbally challenging whatever was present. The response came immediately, a door slamming shut with enough force to shake the walls. After that, no one tried again. The family reached a breaking point. Emma's parents began discussing leaving the house, not temporarily, but permanently. They didn't believe they could fix what was happening. The final weeks in the house were marked by near-constant disturbances. Nothing catastrophic, just relentless pressure, constant reminders that they were not alone. When they finally moved out, there was no dramatic conclusion. The activity didn't stop. It simply became irrelevant. Distance was the only solution they had left. For a while, it worked. Emma's condition stabilized. The disturbances ceased. Life resumed something resembling normalcy. The family avoided speaking about the house. Years passed. Then Emma went back. The house stood empty for years. After Emma's family moved out, no one else lived there. There were no new tenants, no renovations, no attempts to sell it quickly. The building remained intact, but abandoned, furniture gone, windows dark, the structure slowly falling into neglect. For Emma, the distance brought relief. The disturbances stopped. The woman never appeared again. The sounds were gone. The sense of pressure lifted. Life moved forward in a way that felt almost normal. Time passed. Memory dulled the edges of fear. Eventually, curiosity replaced caution. Emma never claimed she returned because she felt safe. She returned because she wanted to know whether the house still held anything at all, or whether the entire experience had been tied only to a specific period of her life. She went alone. The back door had been forced open. The wood around the frame was splintered, the lock broken. She assumed vandals, teenagers, squatters. She didn't turn around. Inside, the house felt unchanged. Empty rooms, dust, silence. No immediate sense of hostility, no overwhelming dread, just absence. Emma walked through the hallway, checking rooms she recognized. In the corner of one room, an old telephone lay on the floor, disconnected, its receiver separated from the base. It hadn't been there when they left. She bent down to pick it up. That was when something seized her. The grip closed around her neck without warning. Not a gradual tightening, an immediate, crushing pressure. It lifted her partially off balance, forcing her backward. Her feet scraped against the floor as she tried to pull away. There was no visible attacker, no sound, no voice, no footsteps, only pressure. Emma clawed at the space around her throat, instinctively trying to pry fingers away that weren't there. Her vision blurred, her lungs burned. For a moment she was certain she would lose consciousness and that no one would find her. Then the pressure released. She collapsed forward, coughing violently, gasping for air. She didn't stand up to look around. She didn't call out. She didn't stay long enough to think. She ran. Outside, she didn't stop until she was far from the house. The marks on her neck faded quickly, leaving no physical evidence behind. No bruises, no handprints. But the consequences of that encounter didn't fade as easily. After the attack, Emma's fear returned, not as panic, but as certainty. Whatever had been present in the house had not disappeared. It had remained, waiting, and it had reacted to her return as an intrusion. She never went back again. The family refused to discuss the house afterward. They didn't seek further explanations. They didn't attempt investigations or spiritual interventions. The experience had already taken enough from them. What lingered were the after effects. Emma struggled with anxiety, not general fear, but hypervigilance. Sudden sounds startled her. Enclosed spaces made her uncomfortable. She avoided old neighborhoods, avoided cemeteries entirely. She never claimed she was still being followed. She never reported new incidents. But she admitted that the sense of being watched never completely disappeared. It became background noise, something she learned to live with rather than confront. The house was eventually sealed off. Its fate became unclear. Records didn't indicate further incidents. No reports surfaced of new occupants experiencing similar phenomena. But absence of reports didn't mean absence of activity. Some places don't need witnesses. The finality of the attack clarified something the earlier events had not. Whatever had begun years earlier had never been passive. The watching, the silence, the gradual escalation, none of it had been random. The presence had responded to boundary violations, first at the cemetery, then in the house, and finally, with force. The consequences weren't dramatic in the public sense. No headlines, no investigations, no conclusions. Just a family that left, a house that emptied, and a woman who learned that some encounters don't end simply because time passes. The story didn't conclude with answers. It ended with withdrawal, and with the understanding that returning to certain places isn't an act of curiosity, it's an invitation. Emma never tried to explain what happened. In the years after the attack, people asked questions, sometimes cautiously, sometimes with skepticism. Was it stress, hallucination, trauma layered over memory? She listened, nodded, and let the explanations pass without agreeing or arguing. She didn't need a theory. What stayed with her wasn't confusion, it was clarity. She knew exactly when things had crossed from strange to dangerous, not when she first saw the woman, not when the house resisted them, not even when objects moved on their own. Those moments had been disturbing but distant, like warnings delivered without urgency. The truth revealed itself only when something placed hands around her throat. From that moment on, the experience no longer belonged to the realm of belief. It became physical, measurable, final. Emma understood something then that she hadn't before. Whatever had followed her home was not attached to her personally. It was attached to a boundary she had crossed and then crossed again. The return to the house wasn't curiosity punished. It was recognition enforced. She never visited the cemetery again. She avoided places that carried weight, places people described as quiet or peaceful, without knowing why. She learned to treat silence with caution. What unsettled her most wasn't the violence of the final encounter, but its restraint. The presence didn't kill her. It didn't chase her beyond the threshold. It applied just enough force to deliver a message, and then let her go. That restraint felt deliberate, as if the intent was not destruction, but correction. Emma often wondered whether the woman she had seen was a representation or merely a sign, a mask for something that didn't require form anymore. After the escalation, the woman disappeared entirely, replaced by movement, pressure, and force. Watching had been enough at first. Later, it wasn't. Emma never claimed to be haunted after leaving the house. She didn't report new incidents. Her life continued. She built routines, relationships, distance from the past. But she admitted one thing, quietly, when pressed. She said that some nights when the house was silent and she was awake, she still felt the same awareness she had felt years ago. Not fear, not panic, attention, not directed at her, but present, somewhere beyond reach. She didn't believe the dead lingered in cemeteries. She didn't believe spirits were tied to soil or stone. If anything, she believed the opposite. She believed that places remember behavior, and that some reactions are delayed. The house, wherever it stands now, may be empty, or it may not. Records don't say. No new stories emerged. No warnings followed. But Emma never mistook silence for absence again. Some boundaries don't announce themselves. They only respond when crossed. And when they do, they don't explain why. They just make sure you understand.